This is Algebra 2 Practice Quiz 7.5. In this first problem, we're just finding the value that completes the square. So our shortcut for completing the square is we take half of this middle coefficient, which is going to be negative 11. So I'm saying negative 22, I'm taking half of the middle coefficient. And then once I find that that's negative 11, I take that value and I square it. So this is going to turn into a negative 11 quantity squared, which turns into negative 11 times negative 11 is a positive 121. In number 2, we have an odd number, which is going to be very similar to our number 4 for our middle term. So my middle coefficient is negative 9. I'm going to take half of that, meaning I divide it by 2, and then I'm going to square it. So when I do that, the top squared is 81, the bottom squared is 4 for my final answer. All right. And in number 3, we need to solve by completing the square. So we're using the knowledge up above to actually solve these. Generally, the first step is we want to make some room to complete the square. So we have kind of a middle or a C term that we're looking for. So I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. And this is going to be 2v squared minus 4v is equal to 3. And then this term needs to be a 1. So I'm going to divide everything by 2. Maybe I'll do that in a different color. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. So now I have a v squared minus 2v, and that's going to be equal to 3 halves. And then from there, I'm going to find the value that completes the square. I'm going to take negative 2. I'm going to maybe do this off the side. I have a negative 2. I'm going to divide it by 2, and then I'm going to square it. I take half and then square, right? So this is going to turn into a negative 1 squared, and then negative 1 squared is 1. So 1 is the value that I add to both sides of this. So this left side is going to be v squared minus 2v plus 1. The right side, I need to have like denominators here and here. I need to multiply this one by 2 over 2. That's Lily in the background. So this is going to turn into a 3 halves plus a 2 over 2. That means that this right side is really a 5 over 2. And that left side over here is, I'm going to rewrite it in its perfect square form. So something squared, and it's going to be v. And you always take half of this middle coefficient. So it's half of negative 2 is negative 1. And then from here, I'm going to solve. I'm going to square root, right? Square root both sides. Square root both sides. Whenever you do that, you have to add the plus or minus. This is going to be a v minus 1, which is equal to a plus or minus square root of 5 over the square root of 2. Square root of 2. And then, unfortunately, you can't have a square root in the denominator, so we need to undo that square root by multiplying by square root of 2, multiplying by square root of 2, which is now going to turn this into plus or minus square root of 10 all over 2. And finally, we are going to get rid of this minus 1 by adding 1 on both sides. So let me move all this stuff down a little bit. If I add 1 to both sides, add 1 to both sides, I know that I'm going to have like denominators here and here, so I'm going to go ahead and preemptively multiply this one by 2 over 2. So I'm really having 2 over 2, and a positive 2 over 2, might I add, with this side. So my final answer here is going to be v is equal to 2 plus root 10 all over 2 and 2 minus root 10 all over 2. All right, so those are my final answers. Watch those. That was a little bit too far. There we go. All right, number 4. Again, we're going to have to make room for the square. So this minus 19 has got to go. Plus 19, plus 19. And I'm going to have x squared plus 9x is equal to 19 minus 9 is 10. And then from here, I'm going to find the value here that completes the square. So I'm going to take our 9, and I'm going to divide by 2, and then I'm going to square it. That's the number that completes the square. This is going to be an 81 over 4 that completes the square. So I'm going to add an 81 over 4 on this side, add an 81 over 4 to both that side. So the left side is now an x squared plus 9x plus 81 over 4. The right side, I need to combine these numbers, but they don't have like denominators, so I need to multiply this 10 by 4 over 4. So this is going to turn into 40 over 4 plus that original 81 over 4. And that's going to be 121 over 4. All right, the left side, I can rewrite this in terms of its square form. So I can say that this is that quantity squared of x, and then it's whatever half of that middle term is. Half of 9 is 9 halves, so 9 halves, and it's a positive 9 halves. And then it's time to take the square root. So I'm going to square root both this side and that side whenever I do that, plus or minus. So now I'm left with an x plus 9 halves on the left-hand side. The right side is a plus or minus root 121 over a root 4. Luckily, this square root is a perfect square, so that can turn into plus or minus something over 2, right? That's going to be still root 121. Wait, isn't root 121 11? Whoa, I think this one has an actual answer. Root 121 is 11. So that means that this plus or minus can move over here. What I need to do to both sides is I need to subtract the 9 halves. So I'm going to subtract the 9 halves right here, subtract the 9 halves. So now x is equal to a negative 9 plus, I'll do the plus or minus up top, plus or minus 11, all that divided by 2. So that's going to make two different answers. The first answer is going to be negative 9 plus 11 all over 2. And the other answer is going to be negative 9 minus 11 over 2. Negative 9 plus 11 is 2, and negative 9 minus 11 is negative 20, which means my two answers are 1 and negative 10, which I can then box. That seems kind of interesting. I want to check my answers on that one. So maybe I should check my answers on all of these. So let's check number 1. 121, 121, 81 over 4, 81 over 4, 2 plus root 10 over 2, 2 plus root 10 over 2. This one is 1 and negative 10, 1 and negative 10. Well, okay, so we're right so far. Then we have the hardest problem of them all. We have number 5. So let's do number 5. Last problem on this practice quiz. So again, let's make some room for completing the square. I'm going to add 61 to both sides, and that's going to be 61. So I'm going to have 3x squared plus 8x is now equal to a 51. I can't complete the square unless this number is non-existent. I needed to get rid of it. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 on the left side and 3 on the right side. So what I have is an x squared plus 8x over 3. That's going to be equal to a 51. Ooh, that 5 looks a little bit bad. 51 over 3. All right, and now I need to find the number that completes the square. So this number right here is going to be this number, half of that number. So I'm going to do that in my scratch work over here. 1/2 of that number is 1/2 of 8/3. And then I'm going to take that number and I'm going to square it. So notice that the 8 and 2 here are going to cross cancel, and this is really going to be a 4 over 3 quantity squared. And maybe I might have to conserve it in here, so I'm going to write it up here and say that this is equal to 4/3 squared, which is going to be 16 over 9. So I'm going to add 16 over 9 to the left side. I'm going to add 16 over 9 to the right side. And now I have, on the left side over here, I have an x squared plus 8x over 3 plus 16 over 9 on the right side. Unfortunately, this is not like denominators, so I need to multiply this by 3 over 3. 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 1 is 3, and that's all over, 3 times 3 is 9, and we were adding a 16 over 9 to that term. All right, this left side is a perfect square. We might as well write it in the perfect square form, so it's going to be x something squared, and that something is this middle term, half that middle term. We already said that half of 8/3 is a 4/3. We found that up here, right? So I'm going to bring the 4/3 down here, and is a positive 4/3. I'm going to say plus 4/3, and then from there I'm going to say that it's equal to, and then I just add these up because I have like denominators. So 153 plus 16 is 169, so 169 all over 9. And then from here we just need to get rid of the square by square rooting. So I'm going to square root the left side, square root the right side, and add the plus or minus. What's interesting about this problem is both of these terms are perfect squares, because I'll write this again. We have root 169, which is a perfect square, and we have the square root of 9, which also is a perfect square. On the left side, we're left with an x plus a 4/3. I know that I'm going to eventually get rid of that 4/3 by adding, or sorry, not adding, but subtracting 4/3 on either side. So subtracting 4/3 on either side, which means my final answer down here is going to have negative 4 over 3 plus or minus, the square root of 169 is 13, the square root of 9 is 3, and that's what our x is equal to. So that's going to turn into two answers, right? The first answer is a negative 9. When I do the plus, so negative 4 plus 13 is negative 9. And then the other one is going to be negative 4 minus 13, which is a negative 21. And negative 9 over 3 turns into a negative 3. And negative 21 over 3 turns into a negative 7. So negative 3 and 7? Ooh, that was close, but that was not right. Let's see what sort of mistake I've made here. So if I add these together, negative 4 and 13 definitely adds up to a negative 9. Negative 4 minus 13 is a negative 21. All right, there has been a mistake that's been made. I'm not sure where it is, which means I have to go back and check every single step. So we did add the 61 correctly to get 51. We had to divide by 3. 8/3 is still 8/3. 51 divided by 3. Is that just 17? I think 51 divided by 3 is just 17, but I left it as 51 over 3 because I thought it would be easier. Let's go ahead and see what happened next. I added a 16/9. Okay, let's check the 16/9. 8 over 3, and then half of that is 4 over 3. Good. I squared that. 4 squared is 16. 3 squared is 9. Everything looked good so far. I added that to both sides, so this is going to be x plus 4/3. Half of 8/3 is 4/3. And this entire side is correct. All right, double checking our step over here. 1 and 5 make 6. 3 and 6 make 9. Everything looks good up to this point. The square root of 169 is 13. The square root of 196 is 14, so I'm pretty sure that's 13. And if I subtract 4/3, I do not see any of my mistakes. Oh, I do see a mistake. A negative 4 plus a 13 is a positive 9, so this one should have been positive. We should make this a positive 3. And if I do negative 4 minus a 13, that should be negative 17. I literally made the mistake at the very end, guys. That's very, very funny. All right, so negative 4 minus 13 is a negative 17, and that stays a negative 17. Okay, I messed up on the very last step. Negative 17 over 3 and a positive 3. All right, so those are my two answers. I think those do match the back of the answer key too. 3 and negative 17/3, 3 and negative 17/3. All right, we got there in the end. Just a tiny little mistake there at the end. That concludes practice quiz 7.5 for Algebra 2. Thanks for watching.